Hi, philosophy class. I've missed you. How's it going? Are you in your basement like I am right now? Trying to figure out what to do when you have so much time? I've been kind of putting this off. I'm not sure why. I guess in some ways it's very personal for me, and I don't want to do anything to disturb you guys or upset you. You've got enough of that right now, but in any case, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about Camus, and then I'll do another one about Kierkegaard. And, just as it happens, I think if I knew a crisis like this was coming and I was going to teach a philosophy class, these would be two of the first people that I would choose, because they are people who sought to confront reality, you might say, in its naked forms, directly, with their eyes wide open as much as possible. And they also wrote with great humor and humility. And I don't know if their insights, are going to seem relevant to you or not, but I'm going to offer them to you in the hopes that you'll at least appreciate them or enjoy them or consider them. And let me know. So I'm just going to pick two themes from Camus. There are, of course, dozens and dozens to pick. You may have even heard by this point that he wrote a novel called The Plague, and I've never gotten through it. That's on me, not because it's a bad novel. I just haven't gotten to it. But he wrote about what happens to a society when something like this occurs. A very famous novel. So anyway, the two themes I want to talk about are repetition, which comes out of the myth of Sisyphus, and then the second is what he calls the stage sets collapsing. And I have, just for a bit of visual aid, I do have this, so I'll give you a second to look at it. So we're going to look at life is repetition. Each act, you can think of each day, each episode, each action ends, and then of course another one begins. And this is going to lead to a couple questions for us. So there are lots of ways to describe life. People have been doing it. People will continue to do it. Camus thought that the myth of Sisyphus captured some important things about life. One is its repetitious nature. So, think of a day. You have a day. Sun rises, flies across the sky, sun sets, gets dark. One day has ended, and then what do you get? Nothing but another day, right? This is not meant to be a good or a bad description, just a factual description. Life is repetitious. I'm guessing many of you have seen memes recently of people talking about this corona situation as a kind of Groundhog's Day, that great movie, right? And that's a day where, again, I'm not sure what's really different about Groundhog Day, the movie from us, except for the content, right? There, the same day seems to be repeated, at least for all the other people. Bill Murray, his character, he can change what he does, right? He changes his responses. He changes his reactions. That's what the movie's about. How do you respond to endless repetition? And in a lot of ways, I think that's a good way of describing the human condition. You're going to have today, and then you're going to have another day tomorrow, and another day after that, and another day after that. And you may not be able to predict the way Bill Murray does, what's going to happen to the other people, but a lot of it depends upon its quality and its character depends upon not so much what happens to you, but how you respond to it. So I think there's a couple really basic questions that this insight raises. One is, what would it mean to make progress? What would it mean to succeed when you know that there's just going to be another day? That's the circumstance, that's the condition that you are born into, day after day after day. Again, not that that's a bad thing, but if that's the case, what would it really mean to make progress in your life? What would it mean to be successful in your life? Because every day you're going to have to stop the day, get some rest, and then start another day. So can you build on the days? Can you get a plan together and say, well, if I do this on this day, and then it'll enable me to do that on the next day, and I can sort of build. And so if I go to elementary school, I go to junior high, right? That's one of our stories of progress, that you move through the education system and you're making progress. And of course, one would hope that you are making some kind of progress in your schooling, learning, for example. Plato saw that as a kind of journey from darkness to light, something like that. So, okay. Let me ask this. What guarantee or what assurance do you have that after, let's say, 4 years of college, what assurance do you have that the next day after you graduate is going to be better than the first day that you graduate? So you've done all this work, you've built day after day after day and made progress and had success. What assurance do you have, or even how can you say it's even likely that the next day is going to be better than today was, or your first day of college? How about this? When you're 35 and you have a career and you have a good job and a good position, are your days going to be better than when you were 3 years old, or 5 years old, or 10 years old? I'm just trying to get us to question, or at least look at the ideas of progress that we have sort of built into our lives. Right? If I do this, then I'll have this, and that will be better. If I work at this, then I will achieve this, and that will be better. Now, of course, that's the very thing that's pulled out from Sisyphus in the myth, because he has to work. So he's working just like we are, and it's repetitious. He has to continue working. But every time he achieves some kind of success, getting the rock to the top, it rolls back down to the exact same position that it started at. So he is faced with what Camus says at the beginning of the essay, with a hopeless and futile labor. The gods thought that there was no greater punishment than hopeless and futile labor. And what's the mark of Sisyphus's futility? That he has to do the work, and yet it comes back to where it started. Now that's, again, a simple image of repetition, right? So can he make any success in that circumstance? Hard to see what that would mean. Any progress? Our situation is not as directly repetitious. Again, our days may change. They're not the exact same day. We don't have the exact same work every day. But what does success mean? What does progress mean? And if we can't say that when I get done with all of this work, my life will be better than when I started it, what's the point of all the work? I'm not saying there is no point, but I think that's an important question. And then finally, it raises the question, the myth of Sisyphus raises this question, what if the fruit of your labor, what if all your success and progress disappeared? And unfortunately, that's not a hypothetical question these days, is it? Lots and lots of people, in fact, tens of millions of people have been working very, very hard at their jobs, supporting their families, making progress, and in the past several weeks, that's just disappeared. Gone. Rolled back down the mountain. Now, for Camus, he sees something else as the ultimate disappearance, and that is death. And he asks us, well, you know that that's all going to disappear, right? Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, maybe there won't be a virus coming through, but you know it's going to disappear. So doesn't that at least lead you to ask, well, what value does it really have? My work, my labor, my success, what value should I give that if I know it's going to disappear? Again, don't take these as questions intended to guide you to a certain answer, intended to tell you that your work has no meaning and that these things shouldn't have any meaning. But it is intended as a real question. And there are lots of degrees of value that you can give something, right? You can give your career total value and devote your whole life to just that. You can give your family total, you can give things total value, you can give things some value, and the question is, if you know that these things you care about are going to disappear, how much, if any, value should you give them? So the second theme comes from a different essay. Very famous idea from Camus. It comes from a different essay, but in the same book. And the essay is on the absurd. And he famously says, we go through our lives, we're working and thinking and loving and laughing and all of this. And one day, you're just walking down the street. He was from Paris, Says you're walking down the street, or maybe you're sitting on a streetcar, and you look around, and all of a sudden, it's as if all of the things around you, the big, beautiful buildings, the cafes, the police, the stranger sitting next to you, the carriage itself, everything, right, the electrical pole, all of that are there. And it's as though you're on a movie set, and they all just, right? You've all seen movies like this where so it's usually used for humor, where everything's happening normally, and then one of the walls falls over, right? And then you realize, oh, this is a fiction. This is all construction. That was not a real house. That was not a real wall. These are characters. I'm in a play, or right, I'm watching a movie or something like this. So he uses that metaphor to talk about a moment in life when you're inside the story, right? So you're inside the movie or the TV show. In this case, that's your life. You're inside it. Everyone is playing their role. The streetcar is taking you where you need to go. The strangers are being polite to you, and they're going where they're going. The electricity is helping everything run. The people in the right? Everything is there. Everything is working. The play is happening, and you're inside it. And then, boom, you see it shows itself to be what it is, which is a play, a fiction, a construction, something that you've put together, other people have put together. As a society, we've put all of this together, and it's been functioning, and you've begun to assume that this is the way things are. This is the world. And he says, and the stage sets collapse. And all of a sudden, you're confronted with the fact that No, that's just wood and metal and stone and flesh. It's just a bunch of stuff, right, that we've put together in the play we call life, and careers and family. We've put them all together, but we've put them together. We're the directors. We're the actors. Right? We're the authors of these stories. Now, like I said, this is one of the most famous lines from Camus. It occurs to me, I hope you feel this is accurate. It seems to me like this is part of what's been happening to us recently. Right? You were a student. I was a teacher. We went to school. We had assignments. We talked. And then the stage sets collapsed. Right? I'm just a guy in my basement. We're all outside of our roles now. I mean, we're trying to pretend, that we're doing all of this remotely. You had a routine. Get up in the morning, go to work for a few hours, go to class for a couple hours, pick your kids up from daycare, call your parents, play video games for 12 hours, or maybe not, I don't know, right? You had a routine. You lived inside of it. You didn't think about it. You didn't consider it to be a fiction. You didn't consider it to be a routine, something that you had created for yourself, or that others had created and that you jumped into and participated in. And now you see that was what it was. We have something called the economy. Collapsed. Money, credit, paychecks, insurance, healthcare, health, friendship. Right? The stage sets. It's collapse. And we're still here. Right? We're still here. But you can't get up and go to school. You can't get up and go to work. You can't do what you normally do. The scripts don't function. But the world is still here. Everything is still here. Nothing has changed, and everything has changed. The stage sets, the scripts, the roles have collapsed. So Camus talks about this and what it might demonstrate to us. And my simple, quick way of talking about this is to say I think he's really talking about habits. It's the best word I have for it. Now, these are habits of movement, right? So, you can't shake hands with people anymore. You can't hug them. These are bodily habits that we have that are very difficult to get rid of, and when we force ourselves, not to follow those habits, it feels very awkward and very strange. But I think he's talking even more profoundly about habits of thought and feeling. Something like this: the habit of expecting the world to respond to what we want and need. That's what the scripts are for, right? That's why we build cars to get somewhere, why we build cities to be able to do things together, why we build houses and all of this. So we're reforming the world so that it will respond better to our desires and needs. Nothing wrong about that. Camus is not criticizing that. He's just trying to point out that we're the ones creating the script. We as an individual, but also we as a society, right? So I've never built a city, but I live in a city, and it makes my life much more, comfortable and easy to get around in, because other people have said human beings, right? Need these kind of things. Let's put them together. So we just get up and we live according to that script and we don't even notice it. It seems natural. It just seems the way things are, the way things should be, until it collapses and you realize, no, that's not the way things are. It's the way we've made things. These are habits of thought. These are habits of action that penetrate our thinking very, very deeply, to the point where we're surprised when the world, or angry when the world doesn't respond in the way that we would like. So you have a cough, you say, I'll just take a little cold medicine and it'll be better. And then a month later, you're in the hospital struggling for your life. The world didn't pay attention to your plans or your script, right? Does that mean the world is out to get you? No, it's completely random. The world doesn't know you. The virus doesn't know you. These viruses are not even alive. The things that are killing us are not even alive. They have no purposes. They have no feelings. They have no intentions. They just are what they are. When they come in contact with us, it can be devastating for us. Not because the world is a script. We are the script writers. So I think what he's describing here is the deepest habit that we have, and that we're doing almost all the time, is to give meaning to the world. We give meaning to the world. The world is just there. And then we turn it into a house. The world is just there, and then we turn it into friendship. The world is just there, and then we turn it into a college degree. The world is just there, and then we create our career path and move through a career. We are the ones giving meaning to the world. Again, not just as an individual, as a collective, as a culture. This is what human beings do. What happens? And what should we learn when the stage sets collapse? When all the things that we've gotten used to that just seem obvious and natural, and this is the way it is, go to school, get a job, take some aspirin, right? What could be strange about that? It's all very strange now, isn't it? Because we're still here. And yet we don't have the parts to play. We don't have the roles. We don't have the scripts. So Camus would say this should teach us that it is we who give meaning to the world. So our deepest habit is giving meaning to the world. And when habits break, when the stage sets collapse, the world changes, doesn't it? Because the world that we've experienced is a world of our own expectations, of our own stage sets. We provide meaning to the world. All right, I want to give you a few implications of this and say a little bit about religion then. First implication at the top here. There is nothing in the world. No person, no circumstance, no material thing like gold or diamonds, nothing social like friendship or family, or you pick it. Anything that has meaning to you. Camus is trying to say nothing must have meaning. Everything that is, just is. We give it meaning. You've all probably made difficult decisions in your life, maybe with a friendship, you had to cut it off, or a relationship. This is something that had profound meaning to you at some point. extremely important in your life, and yet you decided to cut it off, to end it. So did it have meaning or not? Camus would say it had meaning only insofar as you chose to give it meaning. And then when you chose not to give it meaning, it had no meaning. Even a person. Now, this can seem kind of cold and cruel. I don't think it's that way at all. But certainly when you're thinking about, my mother doesn't have any meaning to me, he's going to say, of course your mother has meaning to you, because you continue to choose to give her meaning. You honor her, you respect her, right? You want to please your mother. All of these kinds of things are choices. And there's nothing about your mother, and there's nothing about anything your mother could do for you that would force you to acknowledge the meaning she has. Because, again, you can cut her off. You're free to do it at any time. The fact that you don't means that you choose not to. Which leads us to the second. In the blue here, we are totally free to respond to the world as we choose. When a baseball hits you in the head, you're going to feel pain. You're not free not to feel pain. When a friend betrays you, it's going to hurt. You're going to feel lots of things. You're not free not to feel those things. But you are free, Camus thinks, and I want you to challenge yourself to see if you think it's true. You are free once you have taken it in, once you have calmed down, whatever the circumstance is. He would say, once consciousness arises, once you're out of this intense, initial response to something, and you step out of it, and you recognize, oh, that happened to me. Consciousness, remember from the myth of Sisyphus? Once consciousness is available to you, then you're free. You're free to forgive, you're free to hate, you're free to attack, you're free to accept, you're free to reject, you're free to yell, you're free to curse. You are free. No one can force you to accept a situation you don't want to accept. You're in prison, don't have to accept it. If you want to be happy in prison, no one can make you unhappy. Now, they can do painful things to you. Again, you're not free to avoid pain and suffering. But once you are take a step back from that, you are free then to respond in forgiveness and mercy and love or hatred, revenge, etc. So the stage sets collapse. Coronavirus destroys most of our habits, our routines, the meaningful things in our lives. Stage sets collapse. Camus wants to say, in a very curious way, that should show you how free you are. Because it means you have been choosing to live by a certain set of questions, a certain set of values and expectations and stories of progress, right? I want to work, and this is going to help me get to this and that. All of those are just stories. They shape your life. They guide your life. Well, they're gone now, and you're still there. Perhaps that means you are now free. You always were, but you didn't know it. You are now free to write your own stories. And what could stop you? You want to be miserable? Raging against the president, raging against this or that, and right? Go ahead. It's your choice. I could try to stop you. How could I ever stop you? You want to be angry? Be angry. It's just a stage set, right? It's a choice. So we're totally free to respond to the world in no circumstance. This gets us back to Sisyphus. No circumstance can make us choose to be happy or sad. We must imagine Sisyphus happy. What Camus meant by that was not la la la, happy, happy, happy. We must imagine that what the gift that the gods gave to him was to force him to confront his own freedom, so that he could finally say to himself, I know my situation is absurd. I know I'm never going to make any progress. I know none of this has any value, and yet I am free to give it value. I'm free to make it mine. I'm free to sing and dance as I push that rock up the mountain. I am free to relate to my circumstance however I choose. So the gods gave Sisyphus the gift of freedom, which is nothing but the consciousness, the awareness of your own freedom. So notice how if you're free, you're responsible. Which is to say, again, we are able to respond to the word. You ever think about that? The word responsible means someone who is able to respond. So we are free, which means we're responsible. And we're totally free, which means we're totally responsible. Sorry, not sorry, right? Sorry to tell you, you're responsible for your own life. Okay, I want to say a few words about religion, because I know many of you are religious, and Camus was an atheist, and so it might seem like you could kind of ignore him. Existentialism has some very interesting relationships to religion and faith. We're going to see that with Kierkegaard. Sartre and Camus, and Sartre wrote even more about this, about religion. Sartre would say basically that what religion does for human beings primarily is to tell them that there's a plan. That even if horrible things are happening, the world is chaos, on a different level, God has a plan for us, right? And that can be expressed in different ways. God's will, God's plan, something like God created nature, and so there's human nature, and there's sort of our place and purpose in nature. There's the idea of God having greater purposes for us, wanting us to go to heaven. Punishment and reward is another kind of story, kind of plan. Many people, religious people, will say that the goal of life is to fulfill the purpose that God built into you or God gave you, right? So all of this idea is, Sartre would say, and Camus would say, in different ways, religion says there's a plan. And being part of that plan gives you your purpose and meaning in life. And Sartre would say, I doubt it. I don't see any evidence of that. But let's say it's true. Let's say it's true. Let's say God created us for a certain purpose. This is what we're supposed to be doing. This is right and wrong, good and bad, all of that. So what? So what? No, I think it's unlikely, but I'll grant you. Okay, let's say God exists, that this is true. What does it change? What does it change? Take Sisyphus. The gods existed, right? And they put Sisyphus into a horrible circumstance. They tried to trap him, right? I tried to put him in a situation he could not accept. He must be miserable. Hopeless and futile labor for eternity. Did that stop Sisyphus from finally one day, through his awareness and his consciousness, recognizing that he didn't have to be unhappy, he didn't have to hate the gods, he didn't have to regret all of this, he could enjoy it? If Camus' right, it didn't stop Sisyphus. And you have to ask yourself, could it stop you? Once you recognized how free you were, could that circumstance keep you from being happy? If not, the point with respect to religion is you can accept religion, you can accept the idea that God has a plan for you or not. It's up to you. Which means you can reject it too. So if God has a plan for your life and says if you don't do this, you're going to hell, you can say, bring it on. Or you're free to respond even to a big purpose or plan or goal that God has put into the world. You are as free to respond to that in the way that you want as you are to, a small car accident or opening up an orange and finding that it's rotten. Right? You can respond to that by being angry for the next 10 minutes or just forgetting about it. Same with religion. Same with faith. God himself cannot force you to adopt a certain attitude. You're still free. So in that sense, a lot of existentialists, they don't reject religion. They just say it's irrelevant, right? Because the fundamental fact is human freedom. Now, the next video I'll do is on Kierkegaard. And I just want to give you a quick preview of that. I promise it'll be quick. Kierkegaard would say, this freedom that we've been talking about, this absolute and total freedom, changes the very meaning of faith. And Kierkegaard made a big deal of this in his writings. He relentlessly attacked and criticized and mocked all of the people at his time who were trying to prove their faith, who were trying to give evidence for the Bible or evidence for the flood of Noah, or trying to argue with philosophers about the existence of God, right? Using the kind of scientific, rational, logical arguments to try to prove their faith. Kierkegaard recognized that if everything in life is a choice, and I mean everything, that would apply to faith as well. And if everything is a choice, nothing is rational. Now, if I want to build a bridge, I should probably choose to believe that 2 + 2 = 4, and that there are 180 degrees or 360 degrees in a circle, right? I should probably believe those things, but I don't have to. I can choose. If that's true, if God exists, I can choose to believe it or not. If God doesn't exist, I can choose to believe it or not. The fact of choice means that faith itself is not rational. And believe it or not, Kierkegaard came up with the term you all have heard of throughout your life, I'm sure. The term is leap of faith. He came up with that term. And he didn't mean we're going to see all the evidence we have that God exists and do science and evolution and all this kind of stuff. We'll try to prove it. And if we can't quite get to it, we'll just jump over it, right? No, just a little. No, that's not the leap. The leap is into a chasm. It's into a chasm. And it's the same chasm that Sartre and Camus talked about, which is total freedom. Total freedom. There is nothing in the world telling you, even pushing you to lean one way or the other, that this is what you have to choose, or that's what you have to choose. It's all up to you. So Kierkegaard thought this transformed the very meaning of faith. You can't say, I believe in God or I believe in Jesus, etc., because. There's no because. It's an absurd choice, because all choices are absurd. Absurdity is not stupidity. Absurdity is choosing something even when you know you can't say why. So Camus said that we are absurd when we expect the world to care about our plans and purposes. So all of those stage sets, they function for a while, right? But when they stop functioning, then you recognize how absurd it was for you to think the world is just there waiting to do what you want it to do. Kierkegaard agrees with this and says that faith itself is an absurd choice. It is not an expectation of the world based upon evidence or reasoning. It is, instead, faith is the choice of who you choose to be. Sisyphus chose to be happy in the midst of his circumstances. Kierkegaard says you can make the same choice regarding faith. And it doesn't have anything to do with reason or evidence. Right? What kind of person do you choose to be? Who are you? That is what it means to choose one faith over another. All right. Hope you have enjoyed this. And I will get the next one up as soon as I can. You all take care.